A routine traffic stop turns hostile as two white officers make racially charged assumptions about a calm, well-dressed black woman. The power imbalance is clear, their tone mocking. But what begins as disrespect ends with a stunning reveal one. That silences everything. You people always act like you own the road. The words came sharp and casual, like they'd been rehearsed 1,000 times. Officer Malone leaned into the open window of the black Mercedes, one hand resting on his belt, the other flicking his flashlight across the driver's face like she wasn't human. The woman didn't flinch. She blinked slowly, keeping her breathing measured, hands calmly placed at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. Her blazer was pressed, the edges of her collar crisp. A delicate silver necklace rested above her blouse, elegant. Understated. I was 2 miles under the speed limit, she said. Her voice was warm velvet, but beneath it was something firmer. Malone smirked. License and registration. Unless those are hard to pronounce. His partner, Officer Jacob, stood behind her car, tapping something into a tablet, eyes already narrowed like he was expecting trouble. Or hoping for a dodge. She reached slowly for her purse. Malone shifted. Keep your hands where I can see them. You just told me to get my license, she said. Still no heat in her voice. Just a thread of disbelief so quiet it made the air heavier. From the sidewalk, an older black man paused with his shopping bag mid-air. He didn't move, didn't even blink. Just watched. The woman handed over her ID with calm precision. Malone read it, then raised an eyebrow. Vanessa Rowe. That sounds familiar. You work for the city or something? Vanessa didn't answer. Not right away. She let the silence sit between them. A full 5 seconds. A stillness that made even the night feel like it was waiting. Do, she said. Well, Malone chuckled. Maybe I'll give your boss a call. Let him know how cooperative you've been. She smiled, just barely. You already did. Jacobs walked up from the rear. Plate came back clean. Car registered to her. No priors. Nothing suspicious. Malone didn't move. He kept his eyes locked on her. Step out of the vehicle. She did. He cuffed her. Failure to comply, Malone muttered, snapping the cuffs with practiced ease. You didn't answer fast enough. The shopping bag finally hit the ground. The man on the sidewalk took a step forward. Vanessa turned her head just slightly, acknowledging him with a look so small and so composed it felt royal. Malone put her in the back seat of the cruiser. Slammed the door harder than needed. Jacob stayed behind, watching the scene. Watching her. The ride was quiet. Vanessa said nothing. She looked out the window, watching streetlights blur past. A tear formed, but not from fear. From fury, too. Disciplined to show itself any other way. At the precinct, she was led inside. Other officers watched her pass, some curious, some smirking. Malone filled out paperwork with a kind of lazy confidence, making side jokes to a nearby desk sergeant about how she thought she was too good to talk. She sat there quietly. No yelling, no demands. Just waiting. Finally, Malone returned and leaned in. You're gonna love this. Court date's next week. Local judge, older guy, mean as hell. Doesn't like liars. Vanessa tilted her head. You're right, he doesn't. Malone paused. What? She held his gaze. He retired last month. He blinked. I took his place. The room stopped. Literally froze. One of the junior officers at the printer dropped a file. Malone's face drained. His mouth opened, closed. Your Honor, Vanessa said softly, you've just placed yourself on the docket of my courtroom. She stood, calmly uncuffing herself. With a paperclip she'd palmed in the car. She placed the cuffs neatly on the table between them. I suggest you review the Constitution before then. She walked out past stunned faces, past silence, past fear that didn't know how to speak yet. Outside, the man with the shopping bag was still there. He tipped his head once, slow and proud. She nodded back. Then she disappeared into the night. Keys jingled softly as Vanessa unlocked her townhouse door, the scent of jasmine and old books greeting her like a memory. She paused before stepping inside, letting the weight of the night settle behind her. The moment the door clicked shut, the stillness wrapped around her. Calm and intentional. Her heels echoed softly across hardwood floors as she crossed the living room. Framed photographs lined the mantel, some in black and white, others crisp with color. One showed her younger self in a too large graduation robe, her mother's proud hand resting on her shoulder. Vanessa sat down and kicked off her shoes with a sigh. Her fingers hovered over her wrist, faint red marks from the cuffs still visible. But she didn't touch them. She just stared, then stood again. In the kitchen, she made tea Earl Grey, no sugar, and leaned against the counter as the steam curled upward. Her phone buzzed. A single message. "Auntie V, you good?" She smiled faintly. "Still good. Just tired." V. She didn't mention the arrest. Didn't need to. Years ago, on the steps of Jefferson High, Vanessa had learned silence weakness. It was fuel. At 16, she'd been suspended after a white substitute teacher claimed she threatened him for questioning a grade. No one asked why she'd had a perfect 4.0 until then. No one looked at the footage from the security camera. No one apologized when it surfaced 2 weeks later and showed her doing nothing but raising her hand. Vanessa had spent those weeks reading case law. Her mother, a nurse who worked double shifts, would come home to find Vanessa scribbling arguments on the back of receipt paper. She studied Thurgood Marshall instead of sitcoms. Memorized closing statements like other kids memorized lyrics. And when she got into law school, top of her class, scholarship in full, no one celebrated. Not the counselor who told her she was aiming too high. Not the dean who'd once walked past her 3 times before realizing she was the speaker at their legal summit. She remembered every name, every dismissive look, and she never raised her voice. The tea was warm now. Vanessa took it to her study lined with thick legal books and soft yellow lamps, and sank into the leather chair that always smelled of cedar and ink. She pulled a case file from her drawer. One from that morning. State v. Cordell. The defendant was a young black boy. Shoplifting charge. First offense. Police report said resisted, but security footage showed him crying, hands raised, while 2 officers shoved him into a shelf. She looked at their badge numbers. Malone. Jacobs. A long breath escaped her lips. She closed the file. Not in anger. In understanding. The next morning, she dressed deliberately. Charcoal black suit. Subtle pearl earrings. A simple silver pin shaped like the scales of justice. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her hair was pulled back, tight and elegant. Her eyes steady. "Remember," she whispered. "They don't expect you to remember." Downstairs, she picked up her court bag, clean leather, worn handle, and stepped into the morning light. Every footstep from porch to sidewalk felt heavier. Not with fear, but with purpose. Like she was carrying every forgotten voice, every "you don't belong here" she'd ever heard. She didn't walk like someone was wrong. She walked like someone who knew exactly what she'd become. "Did you hear?" "About who, Judge Rowe?" The whispers began in the courthouse cafeteria. 2 interns spoke in hushed tones over cold coffee and reheated eggs. One of them pulled up a blurry phone photo of Vanessa in cuffs, walking stone-faced between Officers Malone and Jacobs. "Someone sent it anonymously," the girl said. "Posted to an internal forum last night." By noon, the courthouse buzzed. Some dismissed it. She must have done something. She probably played the race card. After. Cops don't just arrest judges unless they don't know. But others, especially those who'd worked late nights, seen her kindness, watched her tear apart legal flaws with grace, said nothing at all. Silence was its own statement. Vanessa walked into courtroom 3B precisely at 9 a.m., her robe flowing, her expression unreadable. But she noticed it instantly. The courtroom clock. Small, dusty, usually ignored. Below it, someone had pinned a white sheet of paper. No words, just an image, a balanced scale. Tilted slightly but not broken. No one looked at it. But everyone saw it. She said nothing. But her eyes lingered there as she sat. Malone and Jacobs hadn't said a word all morning. Inside their precinct, the tension had changed. Their sergeant had received a request for clarification from the chief's office. No accusations, no scolding. Just the kind of formal inquiry that meant something big was brewing. Malone scoffed. So she's a judge. Doesn't make what she did okay. Jacobs was quieter. You cuffed her, man, for what? Talking too slow? Procedure, Malone snapped. She had an attitude. She had a voice. Malone turned sharply. Are you saying I screwed up? Jacobs didn't answer. But the question lingered between them like fog. Down in records. Janice, a senior clerk with graying braids and unmatched knowledge of every file ever touched in that courthouse, sat with her tea and reviewed the schedule. She'd been at that courthouse 27 years. She'd seen judges come and go, but she'd never seen one like Vanessa Rowe. She remembered the day Vanessa first walked in, shadowing Judge Ingram. White men had walked past her like she was lost. Janice had smiled and said, "Show them who raised you." Now, she saw that same girl's name printed above 20 docket cases, under presiding judge. Janice reached into her drawer and pulled out a small pin black enamel with gold trim. No justice. She fastened it on her blouse just below her ID badge. During recess, one of the janitors, the same man from the street, Mr. Louis, wheeled his mop bucket into the courtroom. He didn't look at Vanessa directly. Just hummed as he mopped. Then he slowed past her desk and subtly slid something under it. A folded slip of paper. Vanessa waited until the room was empty before unfolding it. You didn't just walk out. You walked through. Keep going. No signature, but she recognized the handwriting. That afternoon, in the legal library upstairs, two junior clerks argued over lunch. She should press charges, one said. She won't. She's too composed. You mean too scared? No, too strategic. Vanessa passed them in silence. Neither noticed her, but behind them, on the shelf, a sticky note had been placed above a law book. They didn't see her coming. Let's make sure they never forget. Her now. The knock came just before sunset. 3 soft taps. Deliberate. Formal. Vanessa looked up from her chambers, pen mid-air. Come in. It was Gregory Latham, Deputy Chief Justice. White-haired, polished, the kind of man who smiled without warmth and never spoke without purpose. He closed the door behind him and nodded. Double quotes Vanessa, he said, seating himself without invitation. Busy week. Always, she replied calmly. He folded his hands. There's been discussion, up top, about what happened to the officers. Vanessa remained still. Gregory continued, voice even. Some feel it might be prudent for the sake of perception to take some time off, just temporarily, while things cool. Her pen clicked quietly shut. You're asking me to vanish, she said, tone quiet but uncheckable. Not vanish. He lied. Just show that we can rise above distraction. Stay impartial. Vanessa leaned forward slightly. Is that what we call racial profiling now? A distraction? Gregory hesitated. I'm not saying the officers were right. You're not saying they were wrong either. Silence. She let it hang there. Let it say more than she ever needed to. Then softly, I appreciate your concern, Mr. Latham, but I'll remain where I am. This courtroom isn't a favor. It's earned." He gave a tight smile. "Then I hope you're prepared for the added scrutiny." Vanessa met his eyes. "I've lived under scrutiny since the day I walked into a classroom with this skin. I'll survive." He rose as he walked out. She didn't look up. Didn't need to. That week she heard the whispers sharpen. Not from the people on the benches, but from the marble hallways. She's drawing attention. Risk to the courts. Neutrality. Could affect the election slate for judicial appointments. But Vanessa kept her head down and her rulings tighter. State v. Cordell. She ordered the case dismissed with prejudice. Then filed a formal misconduct review of the officer's conduct, carefully citing statute, precedent, and evidence. No emotion. Just law. Lee v. Hammond Industries. She delivered a decision that exposed a decade of silent discrimination in workplace promotions. Her summary judgment was so precise. The appeals board didn't even blink. She didn't raise her voice once, but her rulings echoed. On Thursday, the local paper ran a small headline, "New judge making waves and holding her ground." The article was cautious, neutral on the surface, but it printed the image. Vanessa in robes, gavel raised, eyes fierce and calm. Underneath, a quote from an anonymous clerk: "She doesn't break rules. She breaks the silence." In the elevator the next day, Officer Jacob stepped in just as the doors were closing. Vanessa stood inside. Their eyes met. He looked down. "Judge Rowe," she nodded. "Officer Jacobs." The silence between them wasn't tense. It was unfinished. He cleared his throat. I didn't know who you were," she answered with only 2 words. "You still don't." Ding, the doors opened. She stepped out without looking back. That evening, a senior prosecutor sent her a message. "Heard what you did in the Cordell case. About time someone remembered what law was for." Below it, a second message. "They'll keep coming. Just don't flinch." She didn't reply, but she read it twice and kept it. Rose taking the Franklin case? Seriously? She's not senior enough. She's not quiet enough. The murmurs slid through the courthouse like smoke. The Franklin v. Horizon Tech class action lawsuit was high-profile, hundreds of employees suing a billion-dollar firm for racial wage disparities. The kind of case assigned to judges with decades of silence behind them. But Chief Judge Salinas had reassigned it to Vanessa without explanation, and now everyone waited to see her fail. Inside courtroom 1I, the air was heavy with expectation. Lawyers from 6 firms sat with open laptops and sharpened suits. Horizon Tech's lead counsel, a smug man named Bryce Eldridge, whispered to his team, "This won't take long." Vanessa entered. Robes flowing, chin high. "Court is in session," she said, voice calm, exact. Opening statements were crisp. Predictable. The plaintiffs were underpaid, overlooked, undervalued. The defense said nothing was intentional. Market-driven, experience-based. Vanessa let them speak. But when cross-examinations began, she leaned forward. "Mr. Eldridge," she said, "your firm claims bonuses were based on performance reviews. Can you explain why only 4% of black employees scored above average?" He blinked. "The reviews were internal." "Management discretion," she nodded. "And management was—" He hesitated. "Mostly senior executives." She slid a document. "Forward. Your own records show all senior executives were white males. Every single one." The room shifted. Bryce opened his mouth. Vanessa cut him off gently. "Statistically, either your hiring practices are biased, or your entire executive team is a statistical miracle." A few people stifled laughs. Bryce flushed red. Vanessa didn't smile. She continued. Over the next 2 days, she dismantled Horizon Tech's argument like a surgeon, quiet, exact, emotionless. She pointed to expense reports, flagged pattern-based emotions, and even cited a forgotten email chain that hinted at a problem culture. From a former HR director, her courtroom became a lecture hall. Even the gallery fell silent, watching not a judge, but a forced. By the end of day 3, an older white attorney leaned to his assistant and whispered, "We severely underestimated her." "She's not performing," the assistant replied. "She's just being." Vanessa didn't walk with swagger. She didn't slam gavels. She asked questions that made silence louder than shouting, and she didn't flinch. After the final testimony, she adjourned the court with a soft, "We'll reconvene for closing next week." She stood. The room rose, but no one moved when she walked out. They watched her. Not as a curiosity, but as gravity. Later that night, Janice from Records found a printed page on the clerk's bulletin board. A quote, "Let them doubt your silence. Let them fear your clarity." There was no name on the bottom, but everyone knew who wrote it. The conference room at City Hall was designed to intimidate. Tall windows, long table, flags in each corner. Every chair felt like it weighed 100 pounds. At the head sat Deputy Mayor Ashcroft, flanked by police liaisons, legal reps, and 3 senior court officials. Vanessa entered alone. No assistant. No papers, just presence. "Judge Rowe," Ashcroft began, standing only half an inch before sinking back into his leather chair. "We appreciate you coming on short notice." Vanessa nodded once. "I was told it was urgent." Ashcroft folded his hands. "It concerns the Horizon Tech trial and your previous encounter with Officers Malone and Jacobs." The room shifted. The first card was played. Vanessa sat without waiting for permission. "Yes," she said. "I was unlawfully arrested by 2 officers currently under internal review. That has no bearing on a class action discrimination case backed by 10 years of data." The police liaison, Captain Huron, leaned in. "It could be perceived as a conflict, Judge." Vanessa looked directly at him. "Perception isn't law. Facts are." Ashcroft held up a hand, his voice patronizing now. "We're not questioning your intent, just the optics." Vanessa's gaze didn't waver. "Are we discussing the integrity of the case or the discomfort of seeing a black woman in power?" "Silence." She let it grow. "Because if this room is about feelings, I'll step out. But if it's about law, I'll remind you Horizon Tech's internal documents speak louder than mine ever could." One of the senior legal advisors, an older man with silver-rimmed glasses, cleared his throat. "Judge Rowe, no one's questioning your ability." "Good," she replied, "because your silence last week when I was arrested said otherwise." A flush crept up his neck. Then the door opened. Officer Malone entered in full uniform, clearly surprised to be summoned. He froze for a second upon seeing her. Ashcroft gestured toward a chair, his tone stiff. "We asked Officer Malone to provide context. To clarify if your interaction compromised." Vanessa stood. "Stop." The room paused mid-motion. She walked to the edge of the table, facing Malone. "You want context?" she said. "Let me give it to you." Her voice was low, controlled, like thunder before the storm. "You pulled me over, mocked my name, ignored protocol, cuffed me without cause." Malone opened his mouth. She raised her hand. "Don't speak." He froze. "You didn't know I was a judge, and that's fine. You didn't need to. What matters is you saw a black woman in a car you didn't expect her to afford, speaking with more confidence than you thought acceptable." She turned to the room. "And now I'm here presiding over a case that threatens your political donors, your silence, and your comfort. So you question my optics, not the misconduct, not the inequality, not the data, just me." She took a breath. "Then, I didn't become a judge to be liked. I became one so people like you can't get away with pretending injustice is just a scheduling problem. Dead silence. Ashcroft shifted in his chair. The silver-rimmed lawyer looked away. Even. Malone lowered his eyes. Vanessa stepped back. If this meeting was meant to scare me, she said, voice steady, you should have come with better arguments. Or at least a mirror. She picked up her bag. No one told her she could leave. But she did. In the hallway outside, a junior clerk stood waiting with wide eyes. Everything okay, Judge? Vanessa gave a small, tired smile. They tried to make me explain why I breathe, she said. Then she stepped into the elevator and let the silence follow her down. Courtroom 1A was overflowing, not just with reporters and lawyers, but with people who had nothing to gain, just something to believe in. Former Horizon Tech employees lined the back rows. Civil rights groups, students from a local college. Even janitors from the lower floors had paused their work and sat in silence, their uniforms wrinkled, but their eyes bright. Vanessa sat high on the bench, robe crisp, hands folded. The air was thick with held breath. We, the court, find in favor of the plaintiffs, she read aloud. Damages awarded. $18.2 million in back pay plus interest. Class certification upheld. Legal fees covered in full. A pause. Furthermore, the court recommends immediate federal review of Horizon Tech's employment practices. Gasps filled the room. And then applause. It began in the corner and spread like a wave across every seat. Vanessa didn't smile. Not yet, but her chest rose. She tapped her gavel once, softly. This court is adjourned. Outside, the courthouse steps were chaotic. Cameras flashed. Microphones extended. A reporter called out, Judge Rowe? Did your own experience influence the verdict? She turned to him. The law influenced the verdict. The evidence made it inevitable. But surely, she raised a hand, calm and unwavering. This wasn't about me. It was about all the people this system forgot. I simply refused to forget them too. And with that, she stepped down the stairs. Later that day, back in her chambers, Vanessa sat alone. The room was quiet again. The way she liked it. On her desk sat a single white envelope. No name. She opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten note. You didn't raise your voice, but you raised a generation. She closed her eyes. Exhaled. That evening, as she walked through the lobby, a young black girl, maybe 9 or 10, stood near the bench outside security. Her mother whispered to her, urging her to speak. The girl stepped forward. Hi, Judge Rowe? Vanessa kneeled to her height. Yes? The girl's eyes lit up. I watched your case on my mom's phone. You didn't yell. You didn't cry, but you won, like magic. Vanessa smiled. It wasn't magic, the girl frowned. Then what was it? Vanessa touched her chest. It was knowing who I am, even when they tried to tell you who you're not. The girl nodded slowly. Then she hugged her. Tight. Like someone clinging to a lighthouse in the storm. Back upstairs, Gregory Latham paced in his office. Phone to ear, voice sharp. Yes, I saw the news. Yes, she handled it cleanly. No, we're not pulling her. He sighed. Because the city needs her more than it needs us to feel comfortable. He paused again. Then, yes, I said it. He hung up. And looked out the window just in time to see Vanessa exit the building, back straight, head high. That night, her photo was everywhere, but it wasn't the gavel shot they used. It was the hug. Her kneeling, holding the child. Headline: Judge who refused to break now inspires the one still rising. By Monday morning, the courthouse felt different. Not louder, not brighter. Just aware. The cleaning crew worked with unusual care. Clerks greeted each other with quiet nods, like soldiers returning from the same storm. Even the marble walls seemed to absorb less arrogance, and on the first floor, A plaque was removed. For years it had read, Founders Hall dedicated to justice through tradition. Now it bore a new name, Franklin Hall, in honor of those who spoke the truth anyway. No ceremony, no speech, but Vanessa noticed, and so did everyone who mattered. In the court cafeteria, someone had posted sticky notes on the bulletin board. Bright yellow, handwritten. One said, I spoke up for the first time in 8 years today, because of her. Another, my daughter asked if judges could look like her. I told her they already do. And another, she didn't make it about race. She made it impossible not to see it. In the chambers, Vanessa's desk was buried in mail, letters, postcards, some typed, most written in messy, unsure script, from law students, from retired teachers, from grandmothers, from men who said they'd never trusted the system until last week. One read, I was 12 when my father lost his job to silence. You gave that silence a name and a gavel. Another, simpler, please don't stop. We see you. Downstairs, Officer Jacobs waited near the service elevator. He wasn't in uniform. When Vanessa exited her hearing, he stepped forward, hesitant. Judge Rowe. She paused. Looked at him. He struggled. I didn't know who you were that night. You still don't, she replied, same words as before, but her tone was softer now. He nodded. I filed a report against Malone. Internal Affairs has it now. I didn't before. But I see it now. I see you. Vanessa didn't respond immediately, but she met his eyes. Then keep looking, she said gently. And walked on. That afternoon, in the hallway outside her courtroom, 2 young public defenders stopped her. Judge Rowe, one said, eyes wide, would you consider speaking at our law school next week? Just a panel on judicial ethics. Vanessa smiled. Ethics? The woman blushed. Okay. Power. Quiet power. Vanessa thought for a moment. Then, only if I can bring the janitor who helped me find my center that night. The defenders blinked. Mr. Louis, she added. He's been watching justice longer than most judges have been sitting. They nodded quickly. She walked away with a faint smile. In the break room, Janice pinned something new on the staff corkboard. A photo. It showed a black girl watching the courthouse steps from across the street. From behind, you could see she was holding a book titled Dissent and Deliverance, Voices from the Bench. Beneath it, a note. She's not just a judge. She's a beginning. No one signed it. No one needed to. That evening, the court's website quietly added a new tab under its outreach section, Judicial Legacy Speakers Program. The first name listed? Hun. Vanessa M. Rowe. Next to it, active. The letter arrived sealed in a red folder placed precisely on her desk without announcement. Notice of Judicial Misconduct Inquiry. Vanessa stared at the header. No explanation. Just a case number. The language is vague, but the message is clear. They were coming for her. Across the hall, Gregory Latham stood in his office, arms crossed as he looked out the window. He'd seen it before, how the system handled people like her when they became too visible. Let them rise, the system said. But never too far. He didn't send the complaint, but he hadn't stopped it either. By noon, rumors spread like ink in water. Conflict of interest. Bias from her own arrest. Overstepping her role. No one had the full story, but enough whispered. And Vanessa heard all of it. That evening, she sat alone in chambers. The city lights bled through the blinds in soft orange lines. Her robe hung over the chair. Her shoes sat beside the door, neatly placed. She held the complaint in one hand. The photo of the girl hugging her in the other. Her fingers trembled. Just slightly. They want me to shatter, she thought. They want me to prove their suspicion, that strength like mine is unstable. That calm like mine is fake. For a moment, her shoulders sagged. The weight wasn't new, but it was heavy tonight. A knock. It wasn't staff. It was Mr. Louis. The janitor. He entered without saying a word. Just placed a brown envelope on her desk. Vanessa opened it slowly. Inside, a copy of her closing remarks from the Horizon Tech trial, highlighted in yellow. I didn't come here to be safe. I came here to be seen. And when seen clearly, the truth makes its own noise. She looked up. He nodded once. Then left. She stayed late. Past midnight. No TV. No calls. Just her, a legal pad, and a quiet storm. When she finally moved, she wrote a single-page statement. No defense. No apology. Just facts. Then she closed the folder. And rose. The next morning, she stood before the Internal Review Board. 7 officials, blank faces. Pens in hand, she didn't plead. She didn't perform. She simply stated, I upheld the law. I upheld the truth. I disclosed no bias because I had none, only memory. And memory, unlike prejudice, can be verified. One board member shifted. Another lowered her pen. I've been followed, cuffed, insulted, and doubted, Vanessa said. But I've never broken the law I was sworn to defend. The question is not whether I have failed the court, it's whether this court is ready to admit that I didn't. Silence. Again. Then. Thank you, Judge Rowe. We'll notify you shortly. She bowed her head once and walked out without waiting. Later, in her chambers, an email pinned. Subject. Inquiry closed. No findings. No apology. No explanation. But the door was still hers. That evening, as she left for home, a quiet murmur followed her through the halls, not the sting of suspicion this time, but something new. Respect. The invitation was plain. No gold trim. No embossed lettering. Just a folded card that read, You are invited to the rededication of Courtroom 3B. Date. Time. No agenda. Vanessa placed it on her desk and stared. Courtroom 3B. The same courtroom she had returned to after being cuffed like a suspect. The room where she reclaimed her dignity without ever raising her voice. Now, it bore a new name. The ceremony was small by design. Just 30 people. Judges, staff, 2 news reporters, and a few quiet giants like Janice and Mr. Louis. A few community members sat in the back, dressed like it mattered because it did. Gregory Latham stood at the podium, face tight with formality. We gather not to honor noise, but to recognize quiet power, he said. Judge Vanessa M. Rowe did not just sit on this bench, she raised its height. Applause, short, respectful. He gestured toward the covered plaque on the chamber wall. Then paused. Your Honor, he said. Would you do the unveiling? Vanessa stepped forward, pulled the cloth back, and saw her name etched in gold. The Vanessa M. Rowe Justice Chamber. For those who lead with dignity even when dignity is denied. The silence that followed was an awkward. It was sacred. As the crowd filtered out, a young officer approached her slowly. New badge. New face. Nervous steps. Ma'am, he said. I'm training soon, and I just wanted to say, I studied the arrest transcript. Yours. It was wrong. And you still showed up every day like it didn't happen. That taught me more than my academy ever did. Vanessa looked at him. What will you do? She asked. When it's your partner making that call next time? He swallowed. Speak. Even if it costs me. She nodded. Then maybe this room's working. Outside, the city glowed with late sunlight. Warm, hazy. Unbothered by ceremony. Vanessa stood at the top of the steps. Same place where she'd once walked out in cuffs. Now, students took selfies with her in the background. A mother whispered, That's her. Flashback. The street. The cruiser. The cuffs. Malone slammed the door. The weight of being mistaken for a threat, She could still hear the click of the handcuffs, could still feel the red line on her wrist, but it didn't burn anymore. It hummed like a scar that turned into a path. Back in chambers, Vanessa sat in her chair one final time that evening. A handwritten note rested on her desk. No envelope. It read, "You didn't just hold the line, you read through it." No name, just a small drawing beneath the words. A balance scale. Tilted slightly, but unbroken. Vanessa looked around the room. Same books, same walls. But now the light felt different. Not because the world had changed, but because she had made it impossible for it to stay the same. She gathered her things, turned off the lamp, and closed the door behind her, not with an exit, but with a promise.